This week we were talking about we're still talking about your voice and why your authentic voice is so important and why it makes a huge difference. Oh, hold on just a second. Uh, hey, okay, to my son who lives in the apartment downstairs. So he's telling me about that. But anyways, so we're talking about your having your authentic voice this week, or this whole month is dedicated to your authentic voice. And this last week, I was talking about how not to blend in and why that's so important. And so I shared this story a little bit in the post, but it was the scariest moment for me, the moment I almost quit writing. And it was I worked as a librarian for a year, which was awesome. And hey, Sam, thanks for joining in. And everything was great. It was a dream job. And then one day it was COVID. So the library was closed to outside people coming in. And so only we were grabbing books and taking them out to the curb for people. And I went into the back and all the stacks, the lights are out, right? Because we're not going to turn on the lights with nobody, with no patrons in there. So I'm looking at all the stacks and I'm thinking of how, even in this big library that I worked in, it was a drop in the bucket for how many books were out there, which then came out to be, why am I publishing books? There's so many books out there. What makes me think that I'm worthy of adding to all these books? And so that was kind of, and I actually, that was the question. And I almost quit writing at that point. I wouldn't quit writing, I guess, but quit publishing. I always wrote, even when I'm not publishing, because I kind of feel like I have to. But that was where I thought, why am I publishing? Why am I bothering to take these words out? So, and the answer after I thought about it was because only I can tell my stories. Everybody, yeah, there's a ton of books. That's because there's a ton of readers. And each of us has a story, even if you only reach one person with your work and that person really needs it, then I consider that a success. And that is kind of going to why it's so important to define your voice, your own distinctive voice. And you will. And if you've been following along this month with the different posts, we talked about how when I started putting myself in my writing and my authentic voice, that was the game changer for me. That was my first professional sale, and it has not failed me since. And I still credit Brian Theowara. You will hear me repeat that name a million times because it was his question of, why am I not in my writing, that made the difference to me. And then we talked about how to define that authentic voice, which I just realized the irony of this week when I've had no voice that we're talking about authentic voice. So we're definitely talking about in writing, or maybe this is my authentic voice this week. So it's not a very comfortable voice. And in fact, my voice is already getting tired, so I don't know how much longer I can keep this going. But I didn't want to bail on you guys and not show up when I said I would. But so, anyways, going back to that, when there are so many books out there, how are you going to get people to recognize your work? And that's kind of where we're going this week. And you can read it all in this week's post, which is probably better than hearing me try to talk about it this week. But to to define your voice, it's going to be important for you to define it for yourself first. What tones do you want to use? Are you generally, because you can tell a really horrific, scary story and still have your sense of humor in there. You can still, if you're a very, purple prose and you love using language and layers of language, you can have that in a scary story. That's what your tone is. It's the emotional flavor of your writing. And you can put that in any story, and then people will start recognizing that. The words that you choose. Now, you will have certain phrases that you use a lot that you need to watch out for. For me, it's the word dark. I actually do a search after I write something because I guarantee I've probably used the word dark way too many times. But you can look at, like, I use a lot of metaphor. And I use a lot of, if I'm talking about a murder, I might use a food metaphor. I try to change my metaphors up. And that's something that is a distinctive signature thing in my writing. And then just the consistency. Once you find your voice and what you're comfortable with using, that, and we're not talking about inventing a voice, we're talking about finding your voice within you and then daring to use it. And I do say daring because one of the comments that has been coming to me over this month while we've been talking about voice has been how many people have been told not to use their authentic voice. And I don't know why that is. It almost seems subversive, like keeping each other down. I've had so many people tell me that people will say they should have read, Poe, or they should model their work after this other, great writer. Read more Jack Ketchum and model your work after him. I get that it's good to read other writers, yes, definitely, and decide what we like about them and what we don't want, from our voice. But ultimately, our voice is exactly who we are, and that's all we have. We can't write. Why would we want to write like another writer? There's that writer already exists. That's like just going back to the beginning of this. Why should I add any more books to that ginormous library of books? What gives me the right to publish one more book in the huge stacks that already exist? And it all comes down to authentic voice because only I can tell that story and only you can tell your stories. So once you find that distinctive voice, it's important to just own it, keep it. Don't let anybody make you afraid. Don't start self-editing yourself or trying to sound like other people. Um, when we talk to each other as just friends or, running into people in the grocery store, you can tell just by when somebody's speaking, you can tell who they are, just the cadence and the word choices and the rhythm. That's what we need to do in our writing as well. We need to be that distinctive that when somebody reads a piece of work, they can tell that it's us. And two things on that really quickly because I can feel my voice starting to crack and run out. Um, one of one of the reasons that it became so apparent to me for authentic voice to work, or I guess when I saw the power of authentic voice working, was quite a long time ago, and I was working with one of my clients for coaching, and it was early on when I'd started doing coaching, and I basically rewrote the story for somebody, um, because it was fun and it was a great story, and I was just having fun with it too. And I, you know, wasn't very practiced at the time, so I wasn't understanding the distinction between somebody else's work and my work. And that person was all for it as well. So I was just like, okay, yeah, if you want me to change it, I will do that. And then later, my husband read that story and he asked me if it was a pen name, if I was writing under another name, because he could tell the mechanisms of the story, the language of the story, that it was mine. And so that is what your work should do. You have a story, it's maybe submitted anonymously, but people will still be able to tell that's you. That's what we're going for. And I can't remember my other story because I think I actually still have a fever. So, but next week, I'm actually going to try to get one of the coaching students to join me. I don't know who it will be yet, but I thought that'd be super fun. And if you have any coaching questions, what do I mean by coaching questions? If you are wondering something like, should you go wide or should you go Amazon only, Amazon exclusively with your book? How important is a cover? You have a problem with your book, like you don't know how to connect a certain character in there, or you think you have too many characters, or talking about translations, or how to get your work out globally, anything like that, pop it in these substacks, pop it in the chats, send it to me in a comment, or you can connect with me through the my Substack. But send me these questions, and I will try to answer them. I feel like questions were sent to me this week, and I can't remember them, so I will keep a list. It has not been a good week. I've been sick, and I've had a sick dog. So right now, I'm going to tell you, I'm just happy that I showed up. So I am going to let this go because I think I'm going to have a coughing fit. I can feel it coming on. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. I will see you next week at the same time. And I'm going to go through my messages and see if there's any questions that I missed from this last week. But thank you for everybody who's responded and everybody who sent messages. And yeah, you guys are awesome. All right, I will talk to you later. And I'm going to go drink some tea now and keep recuperating. And yeah, this is the best my voice has sounded all week. So I want to keep it going. All right. Thanks, everybody. And bye. See you next week. Same time.